All right, everybody. We've got an awesome special guest for you this week. We've got one half of the Hive Mind, Mr. Jackson Lanzing. Welcome back, Jackson.
Hey,
Hey,
thanks for having me. I'm always happy to be
yeah,
here.
we're happy to have you back. Yeah, for some reason you keep putting yourself through this of coming on our show, but we really appreciate it
No,
as
literally
always.
nothing more that I love
Yeah, I
than
know.
talking about comics with people who love this stuff as
Yeah,
much as we do.
yeah,
So
it's
it's,
awesome.
it's really it's not torture for me. Trust me, I love this.
You can tell with the people where it is torture, it's like torture for us too because it's like you don't even want to talk about this stuff, but I know you guys love doing it, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad to have you back.
Thanks.
And we got a lot to talk about today. And I think more importantly for me, I want to talk about Batman. Chris wants to talk about Captain America, and you got some new stuff coming out. So I think we're just pretty excited. I think we do this almost every 6 months now because you guys are just pumping out so many different books across different universes. Man, it's crazy.
I
Uh,
love that. I mean, I think that's the ideal for us right now. Is like, can you find a book in the Hive Minds over that really works for you?
yeah,
Are you a Star Trek person? Are you a Batman person? Are you a Cap
yeah,
person? Are you a Guardians person? Whatever. And trying to always like open that door for more people to come in and discover the stuff that helped shape Colin and I into the
hmm
people that we are. And so it's
yep,
almost like paying it forward. Like I'm trying to not have like one thing we do so that you're only into that if you really dig like this particular kind of tone. Like we want audiences to be able to find the breadth and depth of the tone of this stuff. And so working on a bunch of different stuff at once while chaotic is actually a really fun way to just like open that door for people and people can find their thing.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great for me because up until the Star Trek announcement, you guys hit every one of my fandoms like possible.
are
Like
you a,
you
are,
did, you did Kang. You did
Yeah, yeah,
Batman
okay.
Beyond.
yeah,
That we're going to talk about. We'll probably talk about Clayface a little bit. You did that, like one of my
yeah,
Yes,
favorite
Clayface.
Batman
Yep,
villains.
yeah.
yep.
You're going to be doing Guardian soon. Like you guys are just you're reaching into my brain and picking all the stuff I love and doing great work with it. So
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you a Star Wars guy?
yes,
All right, cool. So I'm not doing anything on Star Wars, but it's like a goal.
Okay.
I'm always like
Yeah,
somebody. One of these days they're going to let us on a Star Wars, and then we're going to
yeah,
have the whole
yeah.
trifecta. Like anybody we
Yes.
didn't get with Star Trek, we'll get with Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You'll bring him over. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
what Chris is waiting. He's like, oh, they're gonna announce something there. Come
yeah,
on, let's
it's
go.
coming.
Not
It's
not
coming.
yet,
Yeah.
not yet. I wish
Yeah.
I wish
No, I'm sure.
I can say truthfully, like I love the
Yes.
people over at Star Wars on several levels, but we're not
Mhm.
doing anything with them right
I
Uh,
think the only thing outside of Star Wars you could announce is that they were really tricking me that David Walker's not doing Planet of the Apes, that you guys are,
now. Oh
and then that would be.
yeah. I can't wait for David Walker's Planet episode. This is gonna be good. I'm psyched.
yeah,
I'm stoked for that.
I'm psyched about that whole 20th line. I just heard about that.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's really cool.
That whole
It's
I'm
premise
really
really
cool.
glad they're
that
doing
whole
it.
premise is really really cool.
Yeah. Chris is always a huge Apes fan, and like, there's always been those people there that like anytime they put something out, they'll buy it, and they've been there like they've been true to that fan base forever, and it's cool to see like we're actually getting some more stuff. So
Yeah, I love
um,
apes, so
yeah,
I'm similarly down. I just want to do
yeah,
a whole. I just want to do a whole book about Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That like weird nuclear uh, worship civilization. They just live in my brain rent free. I love those guys. They're so
that's
weird.
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love that Planet of the Apes was like it's not weird enough that everybody's a monkey. We
yeah. We
gotta
have
make
to add more
we
shit.
gotta also add weird faceless underground nuke monsters. You're like, yeah, all right. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
I wish every franchise was this willing to just like go into
Yeah,
crazy shit.
yeah. Because like with the apes taking over, like nuclear power and nuclear waste was still worse. So
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Never stop giving me different colored Navi, James Cameron, and start giving
yeah,
me underground
yeah.
nuclear monsters.
Yes, give me that shit.
Well, that's why,
All right.
like, I
Yeah.
love that stuff too. We'll move on for a second, Mike, but I
Yeah.
love that stuff too. But I was having a conversation with someone recently on why I don't think I'll ever get a Rom the Space Knight movie.
Oh, sure.
And it's because, like, they won't take chances like that. And at least in terms of, like, doing a 200, $300 million movie. Like, I don't think they'll ever
For
take that
Rom.
chance.
Yeah.
Where, like,
No.
Rom would
They really
need
need
that,
to.
like, that experimentation with it to
They
do it
would
right.
really need. Yeah, they would really need to blow that wide open. Who owns ROM? Does Hasbro own ROM?
Hasbro.
Hasbro.
All right.
Yep.
My wife's a
Yeah.
producer in Hasbro. Let me see what I can do.
Okay.
No.
All right, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm like, I love Rom, and no one ever
Yeah.
talks about Rom.
Get her on this call. I need to talk Rom.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they had that book come out, oh man, years ago. A few years, maybe it was more than a few years ago now.
If they ever do make that movie too, I'll be rich because I'm on a goal to collect the entire Marvel run, and I just for a while there was buying lots of Marvel or of Rom books, and I probably have 10 Rom number ones. Just
you're a speculator now, dude.
It came in these lots, and I'm going through and finding where my holes are and everything, and I have doubles of a bunch of stuff. You know how that goes when you're trying to get a new run.
Yeah,
but,
right. Wow, that's wild.
We can move on.
Okay.
I feel like the only person I know who has that same love of Rom is Chris Ryle, who like spent all that time trying to bring Rom back. He loves Rom, just obsessed with Rom. Anyway, sorry.
That's awesome. That's all good. We need to talk about you now because
let's do
time to be here. Yeah,
let's do it.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with Batman Beyond Neo Year. 6 issues wrapped up. I loved it, and we haven't got to talk since it came out, and I wanted to be like the only thing to make me more excited about Batman Beyond was to give us a villain with a giant ass sword. I absolutely, I absolutely love that. So, just I guess walk us down that of. I don't know if you can say it here if we see any more future with Batman Beyond, but yeah, talk about it a little bit.
I'm on it.
Tell us
So Batman Beyond was Neo Year was a real dream of a project for like a lot of reasons. It was a way for Colin and I to play with a character who had meant a lot to both of us growing up. We had both Colin had watched it as a kid. I actually hadn't watched the series as a kid. I wasn't allowed to watch. I had like really weird rules in my house about what I was allowed to watch and what I wasn't. My cartoon of choice was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because I wasn't allowed to watch anything where people punched other people. But if you were an animal, it was fine. So,
animal abuse is fine.
So X-Men the animated series, Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, Batman Beyond. I missed Justice League Unlimited. I missed all of that.
Oh my god!
See, you missed your opportunity there because you could have been like, "Mom, let's assume it's mom. Mom, it's not Mom. People punching people in X-Men. It's mutants punching people in X-Men."
I made that argument, and she was like, "The mutants look like people mostly." So we can't do it. So
your mom's a good person, then.
She, lovely, wonderful, nonviolent, perfect woman who raised the hell out of me, and to this day, kind of thinks that rule was silly. But like on the flip side, it let her raise me on Star Trek. That was kind of the flip side of that. She was like, "You can't do that, but you can watch all of Star Trek, regardless of what happens," because she kind of knew that like Star Trek was going to have limits of its violence and it was going to teach me the morals she wanted me to learn. That was really what it was about. So but that's the thing is like the DC universe is really great at teaching you those morals too. That's what superhero comics are there for in large part, is to like teach us and reinforce the idea of moral and immoral behavior and like what it means to be ethical and all of that. People don't think about that a lot in comics. It's mostly about like bing bang wow. But like I genuinely feel like I learned how to be a good person from reading Superman comic books and Captain America comic books and Batman comic books to some degree. And so I was in college by the time that my cat came to hang out. I was in college by the time that Batman Beyond was something that was in my world. And so the guy who introduced Colin and I, Dave Server, he and I and Colin used to get together in their apartment and we'd just like watch 3 or 4 episodes at a time. And so that was how I got to know it. I was like 18, 19. And I was like sitting there being like, they did Cyberpunk Batman and I missed it. This is awesome. Because the things that I loved out of Cyberpunk, I grew up on William Gibson and Neil Stephenson. I grew up on the sort of like formative texts of Cyberpunk, and then was sort of deeply obsessed with them. I love Cyberpunk. A lot of my early writing was Cyberpunk. So for me, it was a chance to be like engage with that. So when DC came and said, "Hey, we want to do Batman Beyond," I know a lot of people who've done Batman Beyond in the past, Adam and Kyle, and like lots of great comic books, but nothing that they were always superhero comics first. They were like DC superhero comics first and sort of anything else second. And for us, we really wanted this to be a cyberpunk detective book first, and then it was going to be a superhero book second. And so as we looked at that and said, how do we make a cyberpunk book that really like sings with some new stuff? It was like, all right, we need new characters. Obviously I think we talked about this last time. We got to get Bruce Wayne out of the way. Love Bruce, but we've told all the stories that we can tell with him and Terry. I genuinely think, like, unless you're going to translate it to another medium, that dynamic has been played to death. In fact, they've fake killed him in the comics a bunch of times just to give themselves some story territory. And so my thing was like, look, let's commit to it. And let's give ourselves that infinite story territory that comes after Bruce is dead, when Terry has to stand on his own, when he has to become Batman, of his own volition. And then it was about giving him new villains. And that's where Big Ass Sword comes from, is us looking at Terry and being like, well, what are the kind of things that are going to struggle, that this new version of Terry McGinnis, this Terry that isn't struggling with Spider-Man villains, but is struggling with villains that reflect his own problems. What are those going to look like? And so, and I say that, I don't mean to deride his villain base, but they're all like science experiment gone wrong villains, which doesn't really feel like a great thematic pairing for Batman to me. I think the more, like, once he's full Batman, it really feels like what you need out of that are characters who deal with legacy and who deal with what it means to hold up legacy, because that's what he's dealing with. In the same way that all of Batman's villains are like mental health crisis characters, this was really a chance to be like, this is legacy crisis characters. So we said, okay, there's going to be the Sword of Gotham, the literal embodiment of the legacy of Gotham City, a thing that will cut you out of the world if it doesn't want you there. We are going to do we're going to do Gestalt, a character who is all about what it means to not be a single person, but be a bunch of different people and like share a legacy, and who also sits kind of inside the legacy of Catwoman as a sort of like anti-hero ally character.
That was pretty interesting what you did with that character too, I think, at the end.
And really looking at like giving Terry new allies, giving Terry new enemies, giving Terry new things to frame out. Obviously, Donovan Lumos, the holographic man, the whole idea behind Lumos being like, what if you just took the worst parts of what Terry's like public persona were and just blew them up like 100%. So now he's just Bruce Wayne dilettante, nothing else. And like, what does that look like? How does that character interact with Terry? How does that create a really interesting foil? So each of our villains and each of our points were us being like, how do we challenge legacy in the Batman Beyond universe? Have Terry really have to understand what it means to take on the Batman legacy, and then having defeated these villains in the ways that he's going to, know that he's sort of discovered what Batman means for him, and that he can step forward into that. And then if that was the end, we knew we'd be like, cool, we said what we wanted to say about Terry McGinnis. And then the book sold way better than anyone expected. And they put that thing at the end where they were like, Batman Beyond's back in 2023. And
did they consult you before that, or what?
Yeah, we knew that. We knew that was coming. I've been pretty overt on social media without like saying anything like too spoilery, but like if it's back, we're back with it. So it'll be awesome. I really hope to be able to talk about this soon. I think it's going to be an exciting time.
We hope so too, and I just want to like make out the few points like when you're wrapping up there. We get and I know you've like talked about this like being the final goodbye to like Bruce Wayne, and that's kind of what Terry has in those last few pages, right? He finally like, okay, like I'm like goodbye Bruce, and then the talk with Beam at the end of like, hey, I got this mask for you. No, I'm good right now, right? So he's completely changed from like the typical Terry McGinnis we've seen. Like, you guys have finally made that change. And honestly, maybe that's why it sold so well, because like, okay, Terry McGinnis has been this awesome character, and now we've finally seen him evolve, right? And it's not a bad thing. Like, your character's going to be evolved, and we can all be okay with it. And I thought it was a really cool way to wrap it up.
Thank you. That aspect of character evolution is one of the hardest things about superhero comics, in my opinion. Right? In terms of writing them, and kind of in terms of reading them, where you want the character to change because that's what drama is, right? From if you're looking at a story circle, or you're looking at a straight line, however you want to think about the reactor or structure at all, the thing you want from a basic Aristotle figured this out in ancient Greece perspective is you want the character to change. You like, a character starts in one place, goes through the journey, and comes home changed. Like basic level stuff. And comic book characters have a really hard time coming home changed, because the minute that they step into their next run, you have no idea whether or not that change is going to sustain, or if it's going to force, what's going to happen with that. So what we wanted to do, knowing that we didn't know if anything was going to wrap up on this or where it was going to go, was finally make that change. Because Terry is one of the characters you can do that with. It is much harder to make that change in Steve Rogers than it is to make that change in Terry McGinnis. Which is why ultimately we mostly made that change to Bucky Barnes, right? Because it's easier to make a change to Bucky Barnes than it is to make a change to Steve Rogers. And that's that's one of those things that we've sort of learned as we do this is there are times when you can make those changes and when you can do runs that really feel like the character has learned and changed and built. And then you hope that you can forge them into something new and you can keep that story going, or that next creator likes that idea and wants to carry that forward and has their own concept of where to go with it. But with Terry, it was kind of a unique scenario where we knew that if it wasn't going to be us following this up, probably no one was going to follow this up, like this continuity, right? This was a very specific, like, we killed Bruce. I think most people who are going to come on to Batman Beyond are going to be like, I want to write Bruce and Terry. I want to write old Bruce. Because of course you do. That sounds like a blast.
Of course.
Who doesn't want to write old Bruce? We dummies. So we were like, if we do this and somebody else comes in, they'll just ignore this. Like, they'll just ignore New Year if they come in after us. But fortunately, we're coming in after us, so we don't have to ignore New Year, and we can find ways to force that forward.
And we don't have to. Go ahead.
And it's about figuring out how to change them again, which we'll talk about once the book's announced.
Okay, good.
It's one of those things too where I've been talking about with the Batman continuity right now that I kind of hope that they keep Alfred dead for that same reason, because the story opportunities of a Batman without Alfred are just infinite.
Exactly. It means a lot that he died.
Yeah, and I think they need to keep him dead for a good long time. But that aside, what I really loved about the book too, everything Mike said, I thought was really great. You could tell that you guys were fans of the animated series and all of that. But I also loved that you didn't just kill Bruce and then just throw Terry completely to the wolves. You also built him a new support structure, and you introduced new people to help him along the way, because every great superhero, let alone Batman, has a support structure of some sort or a family of some sort. So I love that too, that you brought that element in.
That's we try to do that everywhere. Genuinely, like, I think you'll see that on our Cap run. I think you'll see that on Trek. I think you'll see that. You'll see that in its own way in Guardians. Though Guardians is kind of a special beast in that regard, because it's kind of about the lack of that. But with Terry, it just felt really important. Like, I didn't, nothing against Max or his family or Dana, but it felt important, especially if we were going to do this as something that could onboard new readers, to not come in and be like, okay, so you missed 2 seasons of television and many trades of comics. Let's catch you up on all of that, and then we'll get you. It's like, no, let's introduce Pim Boonma, a totally new character who you can understand is the kind of person that Terry tends to be attracted to, but has a whole different kind of context and gets to sit in his life more like a James Gordon and less like a girlfriend. That will help us get us closer to the Batman archetype without just repeating Bruce. So I'm really glad that worked for you. That was our big risk. It's like, we're taking all your favorite characters off the board. Hope that's cool.
And then what you guys had said at the beginning, like Max Dunbar on the art, absolutely phenomenal. Like,
Book's impossible.
Making that. And the suit looked phenomenal in that last issue. I mean, everything just was a phenomenal book. I could talk about it for another 2 hours, so let's move on.
Yeah.
Chris,
let's move on to another book that came out already before we get to the new stuff.
Yep.
So let's jump. Actually, we'll kind of bridge this with Cap, but let's also talk about, sticking with Batman. You did Clayface, One Bad Day.
Yeah.
Really good one-shot story about one of my favorite Batman villains that does not get used nearly enough. And I like that you brought it back to, speaking of animated series, it felt like kind of a sequel to his story in Batman the Animated Series, where he's this failed actor, and now he's trying to not only resurrect his career, but change himself in some way. But as he does, he falls back into his ways. I mean, how was that story for you guys?
That one, I feel like we really owe that one to two factors. The first is Dave Wielgos, the editor who brought us onto that. Dave and Jess Burby, who are just two of the best editors at DC right now. And Dave is also the editor behind Neo Year. He's the whole reason that book happened. Just awesome. a true friend in terms of his how much he's stuck with Colin and I through thick and thin, and helped us find our way at DC. But he came to us and said, "Hey guys, we're doing One Bad Day. here's all the creative teams. Here's Tom King and Mitch Gerards and John Ridley and Kevin Coley and just like run down this whole list. JB McKelvey's there. Like I'm like, why are you telling us? What do you like? What? And he goes, oh, and we want you guys to do one of the last ones. And we're like, oh, this is a suicide mission. I see. We're gonna follow. We, the guys that like the real heads have heard of, but like most people, we don't have like global celebrity as comic book people. Almost everyone else in that line does. And we were like, oh God, so we're going to come in and do cleanup. Cool. What character are you giving us? And they were like, Clayface. And both of us really liked Clayface, but it never, and we've thought about writing him, but honestly, the only thing we ever wanted to do with Clayface was what James Tynan did with Clayface. James was our buddy and our friend and our sort of our mentor at DC when we first came in. He was our boss on Batman Round Eternal. And so we all used to talk about Clayface redemption stories, and then he did it in Detective.
Yeah, he
and
did
it was like, and it was like, oh, okay, well you did the story. There it is. Like that's awesome. That's all we ever really wanted to do with the character. And then and so we said, Dave, I don't really know what we would do with Clayface. And he said, guys, you've lived in Hollywood for 15 years. You are Hollywood screenwriters who've been knocked around everywhere. Are you telling me you don't have anything to say about that?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And we sat there for a minute. And we sort of, our minds were blown. Like we were like, oh, you're actually inviting us to like air our dirty laundry in comics. Like,
Hell
you're
yeah.
actually letting
That's
us
awesome.
do like catharsis here. So we can really just lean in and tell not like a Clayface story. Like I'm glad it feels like a Clayface story. It's just a Colin and me story. It's a Colin and me story forged through Clayface. It's like if we took our very worst instincts and impulses and all this stuff and like just inverted them and bled onto the page. And once you start doing that, right? Once you start really writing what you know, then it's like, you're kind of on a good track. Because then there's real dramatic potential. There's really somewhere to go. You know that no one else is going to write this. Like, I don't think anyone else could have written it. We have a really specific experience and then a specific sort of place in comics that would allow us to do this. And so it was sort of a like perfect storm thing where we would have never seen it coming. And Dave Wilgos was like this. And then, the second thing that we owe it to is 15 years of getting kicked around in Hollywood and really knowing. So, like, I can point at every page of that book and I can tell you where it happened. Like, where I saw this moment happen or how that person said that to me. Like, where that speech was delivered or what house that party was at. Like, there's so many little things. I've had so many people who've picked it up who, like, don't normally pick up my books, who've called me and been like, oh my God, I can't believe you got that into a comic book. And I'll be like, yeah, nobody knows that's a reference, right? People who know us know that stuff. But there's, a whole, basically our entire 20s is just like in that comic book. And not just us, like a lot of our friends. So it was a really lovely chance to be able to like take something that was very personal to us, like kind of an autobiography comic, and then turn it into a Clayface horror story. Which was really fun and really cathartic and really crazy.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me now why I felt bad for Clayface throughout the whole book, even though he's just killing random people.
It feels so bad for me. I get it. Yeah, it's really
like it's throughout the book. Like Clayface is in this place. First of all, he made the ultimate mistake. Like if you're trying to correct your life and like get back on track, Hollywood's not the place to do it, man.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Jackson will tell us that, I think.
Yeah.
But he gets there and you can tell
deep,
like
I've been here since I was 18.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's too far gone.
Yeah.
He gets there and you can tell he's like, I'm gonna pursue my life to this dream. And like that's my Clayface is the animated series one where he's this like failed actor that uses this thing to turn himself into it. And just one bad thing after another happens and he just falls back into it. You feel bad for him, even though it's like, oh, I feel bad for you, as he engulfs this person and smothers them and kills them.
Oh, poor Clayface.
The tragedy of the character. I think that's to me, that's what I love about Clayface the most is that you want him to succeed, right? Everyone wants him to redeem because you know that at the base of him is a person who he has the same values that a lot of people who read and write comics do, which is we want artistic integrity. We want a vision. We want this idea of like the artist and the connectivity between the artist and the work and the audience. He has all these like esoteric values that we all agree on. But then when he gets his chance to do them, if it's not exactly right for him, he will just murk anybody who gets in his way. His jealousy will take over. His viciousness will take over. His insecurity will take over. My favorite page is him sitting alone in the trailer, just kind of melting after he gets thrown off set. And he's just kind of melting in his trailer alone. And the director has said, I need to see a man about a horse. And he sits there and he just sort of says to alone, like, I think it's the only piece of dialogue on the page. He just sits there and goes, "You're the horse, Basil." And it's like, that's the thing, man. That's what everybody in this town does, is like, eventually you have this moment of sitting alone in a room and being like, yep, like you just fucked up. Like you're the problem, because everybody's been told that at some point or another about something or another. And I was like, if I can show you that moment, like if Colin and I can take you into that scene and make you feel bad for him, and then 2 pages later he kills someone, and then the next 2 pages he kills like 6 more people, right?
Yeah.
And you're still feeling bad for him, then there you go. Then the empathy has worked. Then ideally, like that vibe has worked, and that's why Batman needs to show up. Spoiler alert! At the end of the comic, to say 12 people are dead. None of the rest of this matters. Sure, I feel bad for you. Sure, you had motivation. Mm-hmm. Sure, you had all these things you did. You killed 12 people in one day. Like, it doesn't matter what a good actor you are. That's not the point anymore.
Right. It does not matter.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Really glad you did. Dude, and just shout out to Zermanico, without whom that book would never have worked at all. Oh, just an unbelievable artist.
So talented.
I'm kind of
the colorist.
Oh my gosh, I know Romulo, who did the back half of Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a really talented. Also did is it called High Level? I think is what it was called. The Vertigo book that Rob did, that sci-fi book. Romulo also did that. He's a really variable colorist. Does a lot of really cool stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Never seen so much yellow in my life, but I loved it. It works for not only just bouncing off of Clayface being this like brown goopy monster, but also like it's California. Of course, it's yellow and bright and all this.
Right.
So
exactly. Sun's so tall.
Colorist killed it in that book.
All right, Captain America. Now let's do it. I know Chris
it's a good way to. Good way to bridge the gap, because not only is Cap.
Let's go.
You've done like 11 issues, I think it is.
Yeah.
But you have more to come. You have a big event coming up.
We do.
So I think where I want to start is, last time we talked, you were just about to launch Cap, and you had discussed with us this moment that you thought that everybody was going to be upset about. So I think a good place to start is, did you get that moment? Were people upset with you? Because I remember when it happened, I was like, I think they were overthinking it. It wasn't that big of a deal.
People did not get upset at us in the way that I thought they would. I was very happy. I'm very happy to report that the fan base seemed to get it and seemed to dig it and seemed to dive in on it. So I think there was still some. I on occasion I get somebody who's like, "I don't like how you write, Bucky," and that's fine. I totally get it. I completely understand it. I think there's some complicated aspects to Bucky's voice in our book that hopefully by the end of the book will reveal themselves. But I've been very gratified by the whole run. I was very nervous. It's a character that means a lot to me. Both of them, honestly, are characters that mean a lot to me. Sharon Carter means a lot to me. Finding a way to build new stories for these characters it's a much more of a live wire than with Batman Beyond, because they have so much more history and so much more deep continuity and so many more iconic runs on them. And even literally, I sat down when we did Captain America 0, I sat next to Mark Waid at a signing, and Mark turned to me and he said, "I don't envy you at all." I was like, "What?" He was like, "I don't know how I would write Captain America right now." Genuinely. And I'm like, okay, like Mark Waid, who wrote one of my favorite Captain America runs, me neither. I think I know how to write. I think I know how to write Steve Rogers. And that's where we built up. And I sort of told him that, and he was like, that's sort of the move, right? Because you got to find a way to get into the character that isn't built around the politics of like America. Because we've been doing that for 10 years, and I'm not going to do that better than Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like the better way for us to do this for us is for us to take a character-centric look at this and really try to like look at what it means to be Steve and Bucky and how to build that out. So I thought that we would get Steve and Bucky to this point in issue 5 where we would, again, spoiler alert for anybody who's not reading the book, but I think at this point it's been relatively exposed, where Bucky would make a choice to go right and Steve would make a choice to go left. And in Bucky making that choice to go right, he was going to have to shoot Steve. And I really thought that like that moment of tearing these guys apart and messing with their friendship would sort of be the bellwether of whether or not the book was working. If people liked what we were doing and felt like that was justified, then the rest of the book would work, because that's the big move. And if people looked at that and called bullshit, then the next year was going to be a real nightmare, because we wouldn't have the buy-in on everything else that we were going to do, because that really is just the beginning of the story. That's the kickoff. Mm-hmm. Everything before issue 5 is kind of prologue to what the run is. And then the run really kicks off the minute that Bucky puts down that, like drops that arm with Steve, puts on the Revolution arm, puts his hair up in a fucking bun, and sits down at the bad guy table to be like, I'm the new Revolution, let's go. And like I knew once we hit that point, and then we were going to do that special with Kev, and I was like, this really has to land or we're all going to fall apart. So I was definitely overthinking it, but that's my job. Like, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
I think you did it with that speech. I can't remember if it was the next issue or when it was, but where Cap is thinking, it wasn't really a speech, it was in her monologue where he's thinking about it, and he goes, I know where Bucky was aiming. He wasn't aiming to kill, he was aiming to do this. And by, you went comic book sciencey on it and said, because of this, and that, like, I know this is my friend Bucky, and that's what did it for me. Like, I remember that was the last page of whatever issue it was where he gets shot, and you're like, oh man. And then next month you're like, what happened? And we get that answer, and that really solidified it for me. It's like, okay, there's a plan here, and I can see what Bucky's doing. And then fast forward to now issue 11, where we see that, yes, Bucky is still, while he's at the bad guy table, he's still a good guy because of things he's doing.
Yep.
And how he's reacting.
He is playing a very dangerous game. Like, quite literally, right? Like, he's at the table of this thing called the Century Game. They've been doing it for a long time. He's the new player. And if he wins, he can disassemble all of it, right? He's trying to take down the bad from the inside. But the trouble with doing that is it's very, very hard to tell when you get to a certain point whether or not you are the good guy or the bad guy. Whether or not you have become a villain by sitting at this table, even if you're trying to fight them, you're utilizing their tactics. You have to utilize the way that they play in order to win. So the second arc, The Invader, is kind of all about Bucky learning what that means, right? Can he do this just by positioning Steve into a position to win? And what he's going to kind of learn, and what he is, I think, learning progressively, is like, yeah, that works up to a point. But that's only really going to help Steve win an individual battle, which isn't enough to win this war. What Bucky needs to do, what Bucky's sort of doing right now, is he's isolating and understanding what the outer circle needs, what they're going after, what each member is doing, especially the money and the power, who seem like kind of the block that's been like running this thing for a long time. He needs to figure out what those two people, what their efforts are towards, what their goals are, what they're really trying to do, so that he can pull some really strong moves to try to undo that and take that apart. The trick is that those strong moves are going to be, by their very nature, much riskier than the moves he made in the second arc. They're going to be much more dramatic. They're going to be much more devastating, sort of personally and sort of like globally. And they're going to get him a lot closer to that supervillain line. And that's what Cold War is all about, right? Is as we hit into this event, it's saying, what does it look like when Bucky fully embraces his villain period? What does this mean for him? And how does that affect his relationship with Steve? Can it ever come back once he's stepped there? Because I think basically ever since that gunshot in 5, Steve's been like, I can get Bucky back. I can get Bucky back. I can get Bucky back. And I feel like by the end of this run, right? So I think we just saw 10. So at the end of 10, again, spoiler alert, but one of their oldest friends, Roger Aubrey, is the Destroyer, is killed by MODOK. He saves them all from getting out of MODOK's sort of mind control, but then MODOK, as punishment, just murders Roger Aubrey. And Roger dies heroically, saving the rest of the invaders. Well, that's one of Bucky and Steve's oldest friends. They fought together in World War II. They've been at this a really long time. And now he is dead in part because of actions Bucky took, right? There's no way that isn't a problem for Steve and Bucky, for Sharon and Bucky, for Peggy and Bucky, for everybody and Bucky, because of where he has established himself. And so how he deals with that guilt, the decisions he makes in the aftermath of that guilt, and how that affects the story moving forward is really the backbone of the climax of this arc. We've known since moment one that Roger was going to be the turn point in this, and which was hard because we really fell in love with the character even more than we already had, like, writing him. So we all at the like 11th hour we were almost like, what if he doesn't die? But but it was so ingrained into the emotional aspect of the thing. We had
to be done.
If it wasn't Roger, it wouldn't have mattered nearly enough to everybody involved. He was the only person for whom that would matter. And frankly, it's not like anybody else was telling Roger Aubrey stories. So I'm not sitting here being like, oh man, we took this toy off the board that everybody was using. No, like, I hopefully we gave an ending to a character who has been mostly forgotten by modern comics. So I hope that people kind of forgive that. That was the other thing where I thought people might get mad at us, because he's also like one of the first canonically queer characters. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. Like, he's perfect. And he's a character I love. So like, he felt like the right move.
Yeah, and you can't think with those like social issues aside, like, you can't think about that. They got to be treated like any other character. They have to be available. Yeah. But I think the two other characters I'd love to talk about real quick before we jump to other things is one, the fact that it was MODOK. Like, I'm so happy you guys used MODOK and used him well. And the whole MODOK with a C and then MODOK with a K thing that you did was really fun.
Nice. Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, just him being that villain for me as a longtime Cap fan and just as longtime MODOK fan made it even better. Just I miss when these characters, like, it seemed like for a while there we kept going back to either Arnim Zola or Red Skull, and then Arnim Zola and then Red Skull, and I'm like, well, what about these guys? What about MODOK? What about, there's so many other great villains that he has. This isn't. I'm going to zone on a character, but he has a rogues gallery we can pull from, and MODOK's one of them. But I love that you used him.
It was either MODOK or Prototype. Protocide. It was either MODOK or Protocide, and we were like, I'm not using Protocide. I really like. Honestly, MODOK wasn't in our original outline. We knew we had an opening for the 5th star point, and we wanted to kind of keep that open and figure out what was going to really make sense for our second arc when we got there. And it got inserted when the Mark Brooks cover for issue 0 came out, the big wraparound that had like every character in the Capiverse. And Colin and I looked at that and he said, well, we should really make sure that we have plots for most of these characters at some point, so that this cover, so that backwards looking, this cover really feels like it was intentional. We just gave away the ghost on that one. There was a bunch of stuff from Symbol where, characters we knew Tochi was going to use, like Shuri and things like that. But here was Falcon, but here was a chance for us to look at that thing and be like, who are some characters we're just not using? And we knew that we had plans for Black Widow, and we knew that we had plans for Sharon, and we knew we had plans for Peggy, and like we had all these characters sort of, Namor, and we had plans for everybody in little ways. Way small and big, but Mark's MODOK was just like ugly and scary, and he was like he's in that cover, and he's kind of up above, and he just looks like if you saw him you would be unsettled. Yeah, and I had this moment. I think I like tweeted to him, and I was like, I just love your MODOK. And he was like, yeah, I really like it when MODOK is scary, and I was like, I also really like it when MODOK is scary. Like that's something we haven't seen in a while. Because MODOK is scary-ish in X-Men, but he's kind of a big pulp villain in X-Men. This was a chance to be like, and he's a Jerry Duggan character, so he's always going to have a little flavor of humor. Jerry's very funny. We were like, how do we do the absolute opposite of what Jerry's doing, right? Like completely separate, so that Jerry's version still exists and that it's still operating in X-Men and it's still killing, it's doing the orchestra thing, but that every once in a while when it's not looking, it goes through a body horror transformation and becomes this horrible horror MODOK that we're going to play with.
Yeah.
And the X Office and Jerry were gracious enough to let us take the character for a joyride. And we really leaned in on making him as scary as possible. And then obviously Carmen just nailed it in terms of that body redesign and that kind of prowling, like evil cat MODOK. I was really into it. I've been very,
that's awesome.
Very gratified. I'm excited for you guys to see the end of that arc. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So looking at this cover right now, you just got me excited because I see like World War II style characters.
Yep.
And I see Zemo and
yep. Yeah, I think Zemo's the one guy we're not using. I'll say firmly, I love Baron Zemo, and he was absolutely on the list of things we want to use. But I think by the time that we're done, we're probably not going to get to him, just because we have so many other characters we like super fallen in love with.
Well, hopefully he'll end up in the Sam Wilson one where they can dance together again.
There you go.
That reunion.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
My last character I want to jump on because I just want to like basically congratulate you on this. Sharon Carter, to me, not only is Sharon like a badass character on her own, like she's a super spy, she can hold her own and everything. But what I love about Sharon with Steve is like Sharon to me is Steve's true love in the comics verse. I like the way they did it in MCU. I think Peggy was perfect for that. But in the comics verse, Sharon is his true love because we see the best Steve when Sharon is around. And you showed that when she shows up. Like he becomes better because of her presence. And probably and vice versa as well. But I love that moment when she shows up and I just could see on the page that Steve wanted to be a better man in that moment just because she was there.
That Carmen DPS when she shows up and they have like the like little fight that becomes a romantic dip and then you get like the tear in his eye. I was like, it floored me. I just used to look at that thing just to like feel good when I was in a bad mood. Like I feel like I get better when Sharon shows up. Like I love that page so much. And I can't agree with you more, right? Like I think what's cool about Sharon Carter is sort of twofold. It's on the one side that she is the person who brings out the very, very best in the world's best man. But then on the flip side, she's a fucking mess. She is a CIA effectively asset, like a SHIELD asset, who's done all kinds of morally compromised things. She's the kind of person who I always think about those moments when she would, I think it's from like the Wade run, where she will she'll like go out drinking because she can't deal with like being around Steve right now. It's like, oh, he's just too good. Like I need to just like get in a bar fight. Like that she is she's kind of a messy person. And of all people, it's like the last thing you'd think would be like Steve Rogers' love interest is this like kind of messy, weird, badass person with like anger issues and a drinking problem. But she's genuinely perfect for him because she reflects all of this real world, actual human quality that Steve always like. And Steve inspires the best out of people, and she's like the one person who's like, "You can inspire the best out of me. I'm still going to be a mess." And I love that for her. I think that's and so a big thing for us was coming in and being like, we want to make sure that she reflects well on Steve, but also that she has her own plot, that she has her own story that she's going on, that she has her own arc, that she is having an experience as well. Because too often love interests in comics across the board get caught in the context of being in the wake of the hero. And Sharon is a hero in and of herself, and is one who I think deserves some new story territory her own. So I don't know if you guys have seen the costume redesign that popped, but Marvel put out a new Sharon costume that I can't talk much about, but that is part and parcel with a plan we've been playing since literally since issue 1. So I'm excited to get there and show people where we're landing that, which will be it'll sort of build in Cold War and then it'll launch right after Cold War.
Yeah, I'm excited for Cold War. I really like what both the books are building up to, and with the Sam book, I'm sorry, I'm zoning on the writer's name now, but
Tochi Onyebuchi.
Yes, so he brings in Nomad, and like that's a character from the Remender run.
Remender, yeah, Rick Remender, yeah.
I can't talk today. Remender run that I loved and then was just forgotten about.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Huge.
I love
huge.
what both of you are doing with
Oh, dude.
that.
Well, so we're all huge fans of the Remender run. I before we started doing Cap, I went back and I reread all of it. Like, I mean, I not all of it, but I read pretty much all of it. Certainly everything that I could find on Marvel Unlimited at the time, especially. And so I was just binging Cap so that I had it all fresh in my mind. And, you know, I've read all of it before, but I actually had skipped the Remender run because I have a complicated relationship with Rick's writing. I really, really like it, but sometimes I'm just not in the mood. His stuff can get really dark and intense and can put me in a bad space. So I love Deadly Class, but I can only read it in certain moods. So I was like, I'm gonna, you know, I hadn't read his run, and I read his Cap run, and I found myself immediately just in love with the concept of Dimension Z. I love Dimension Z. I love what it did to Steve. I love how his relationship with Ian builds out. I love Jet Black. Like, there's so much. Stop it. I know my cat's trying to eat this moss that she should not eat. Yeah, I know.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
So, I'm a big believer. Come on, cat. All right, I'm sorry. I gotta take you off. There you go. I'm a big believer in putting characters into like really different context and doing something really new and fun with them when somebody's been doing one thing for a while. And people have been so stuck in like a spy movie vein with Cap for so long. And Rick Remender came in and was like, "What if it's a dark monster fantasy?" And like, I love that. I just think that's totally dope. That's what we're doing on Guardians, right? People have been doing space opera Guardians since Gunn, and we're coming in and we're like, what if it was a dark Western? And I was like, oh, okay, got it. We're doing something totally different. So I liken our Guardians run very much to Remender's Cap run. But when we were coming in on Cap, we were like, hey, let's use something from every run. Let's really try to make this feel like a culmination of a lot of different stuff. And so we knew Dimension Z was something that we wanted to hit, but we never knew where it was gonna live, and we needed to get some other stuff out of the way and how it was going to connect to the outer circle, and we're going to make that all work. And we're really excited to finally show people what that is. We built that out with Tochi and with Tom and Alana and the whole team at Marvel to really make this. You know, we've said we're going back to Dimension Z. We are going. You know, nice. We're embracing Ian. We're doing something really new there. We're bringing in characters from both books. Bucky's there. White Wolf is there. Natasha's there. Like, everybody is coming to the fore here. Sharon and Misty are both going to be like having their own plots and their own interactions. And obviously Steve and Sam together, both wielding the shield. Like, if Cold War's got a problem, in my opinion, is that there are too many awesome characters doing awesome things. So that's it's been a blast for us. And it's been, it's our first Marvel event. So that's been its own incredible experience. Cool. Like, seeing how that works and how to do it and how you can make that, part of your run. It's been a delight.
You made the nice segue for us, because the book that I'm super excited for when you teased it for us last time we talked was Guardians of the Galaxy, which comes out in April, I think, right?
Yeah.
So just give us the rundown about that. You started to say like dark fantasy monsters. Now I'm even more pumped. I mean, what can you tell us about this book?
Guardians of the Galaxy is Unforgiven meets Next Wave. It's like it is dark, weird, Western with bizarre humor and huge stakes and very intense emotional sort of baggage. You can come onto this run if you've never read any Guardians run before. This run will step you in. It's helpful if you've seen the movies, I guess, because you'll know where these characters kind of normally live. But the Star-Lord you meet at the beginning of this book is going to feel pretty different than the Star-Lord that you left at the end of Al's run. Similar to Nebula, Gamora, Mantis, Drax. That's our team. Rocket is not on the team right now, and moreover, Groot is sort of the center of our run as we are walking into the first arc. The first arc is called Groot Fall, and we've been some people have been like, "Oh, are they killing Groot? Oh, are they turning Groot bad? Like, oh, what's going on?"
Yeah.
People will find out what that means in issue 1. at least to some degree, and really unpacking that over time is going to be a big part of the first 5 issues of our run. Every issue is a one and done Western solo story, so you're not going to be seeing like there is an arc and there are ongoing narratives, but much more so than Captain America. This is a book that every issue is going to deliver a full story, and you're going to be getting something full out of it. Not every issue is going to have all the Guardians in it. Some issues are just going to be a deep dive on Star-Lord or a deep dive on Gamora or whatever. And then other issues are going to have them all and be big, crazy, messy Western stories. It's like our second issue is called A Fistful of Mysterium, right? Like we're doing weird space Marvel Western. Like that is what the book is.
That's amazing.
It's going to be we're really excited for it.
Yeah.
Space Westerns are hot right now.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I really like, actually, is that when you talk about space Westerns, Colin's really the one who's pretty intense about this, but like, I'll try to do my best Colin impression. Westerns aren't a genre; they're an aesthetic. They're like you put cowboy hats on something, and that makes it a Western, and that's kind of nonsense. Yep. That happens a lot. People do that a lot, but they don't actually think about like what kind of Western they're telling. They're just like, oh, I don't know, it's a Western. But there's a big difference between something like The Searchers and The Harder They Fall and Unforgiven and Firefly, right? Like there's a really distinct difference between these things. Just because everybody's saying y'all and you're playing slide guitar doesn't make it a Western, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at this and say, well, this is a like a William Money Western. This is a hardcore, like sad, emotional frontier story. That's really where this is. And then anything else that comes out of it that feels like sort of science fiction or whatever, that's a trapping on top of that. But we're always looking at any of these stories and saying, if we strip them back, could you just tell these in a Clint Eastwood movie? If you could, then we're kind of hitting the right vibe. If you couldn't, then we're not. And that's sort of our bellwether for anything in this, rather than trying to be like, we put all the Guardians in cowboy hats, though we did put Star-Lord in a cowboy hat because you got it, and I'm punching because you got it.
I got a couple questions. I mean, so this is the flagship Guardians book for Marvel, right? I mean,
it is.
Yeah. So is this your first time doing that, like with a flagship book?
I guess. I mean, when we got Steve, the idea was it was going to be the only Captain America book, and then they expanded the line because it was around the same time that Falcon and Winter Soldier was coming out, and they were like, now that we're passing the torch, it really should be a Sam Wilson book, and they're correct. So then we bifurcated that line. Sam Wilson was originally in some Sentinel of Liberty's plot, and it was a really good thing for everybody that he pivoted into.
He left. Okay, cool.
So that was kind of supposed to be flagship. I think this is our first, no subtitle flagship title. That is true.
Yeah, because I hadn't really thought about that. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, and sorry, no pressure there. But
no, that's fine.
There's no ending number. There's no side, undertitle. And I'm like, I was really pumped to see that you guys got this book.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I don't know if you can tell me while we're recording, maybe when we're not recording, but can we expect any 3,000 characters to show up?
I will not say anything about the 3,000 characters except that I love them. Okay. I love them. I think they're so weird, and I could not count on my two hands. So more than 10 times have people come up to me now at conventions and ask me to bring Vance Astro back. So I hear everyone
I love it.
who wants Vance Astro. But my honest answer to anybody who's asking for old characters to come into this run is don't hold your breath. Not because we don't love them, but because similar to Batman Beyond, our entire framework for this book is new characters, new territory, new stories.
Yeah, which is fine, which is awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to build forward. So. The area of space the Guardians are in, it's called the Fold, which is short for the Manifold Territories. There's a whole area of space that has opened up after Reckoning War. There's the new area of space that Dan kind of put on the Marvel table. We're taking a corner of that. We're calling it the Manifold Territories. It's basically a whole bunch of dead worlds. It's just worlds that have never had life on them. Just a whole swath of space of dead worlds. And so that's offering people a place to colonize. It's offering people a place to set up and mine and do colonies and build churches and build, Western stuff, right? It's the Old West.
Right.
It's giving them a space to open up to do that. And it's there that the Guardians have moved. It's there that the Guardians are protected. The Guardians are not really the Guardians of the Galaxy right now. They're the Guardians of the Manifold Territories right now as they figure out what is going on in there and how it's affected by Groupfall. So there's going to be a sort of ongoing question mark, I think, about what's up with the Skrull, what's up with the Kree, what's up with the other Guardians of the Galaxy, with Nova, with Phyla-Vell, with Moondragon. What's going on with all of those characters? We are mostly leaving those over in known space for writers like Al on X-Men Red to play with, because they are still very active and they're still very much there. But our Guardians are really over here in a different part of territory, so they're going to be mostly meeting new characters or new reflections on old ideas.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. I think the first in continuity thing we've used is Spartax. Issue 3 is all about.
Oh, nice!
Is all about
cool.
It's all about the Spartoy, and but through a very different lens than we're used to seeing them, I think.
Okay, cool.
Does Peter still have his weird sun god powers?
He does, and will be. That is a big part of issue 3. Okay. Reckoning directly with his weird sun god powers and with his connection to the to astrology and to the Spartax and all that stuff, which is all very quote unquote un-Western, is very. We're attacking that directly in issue 3, so that we can kind of put a period at the end of that sentence, as it were, and build forward from there.
Not have to address it really.
I mean, we will be addressing it, but I think in terms of I think a lot of people are going to be asking for a while, what about Peter's power? He has all this power. When is he going to use the power?
Right.
It's I don't want, especially when you talk about a Western, it's really, really tough to have a character who's a sun god, because they sort of answer any question with, I have the infinite power of the sun. And it's okay, well, got it, cool, love that. And frankly, I do love that. I thought Al's run was super dope. And I particularly love the weird astrology issue where he gets all of his weird sun powers. That's totally something I would write. I love it. So I'm we're not trying to bury it, which is why we're not saying, that never happened, right? No, we're absolutely embracing that. We're absolutely taking that forward, but we're trying to say, here's the next part of that. In the same way that we're ending, that Al's run ends with the Guardians being space cops and them all being happy, and there being 30 of them. And now our run is opening up and there's 5 of them and they're all kind of insane now. And it's okay, what happened? What happened that broke the Guardians? And that question mark is a big part of it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
So fans of Al's run can definitely come over. I think they'll see a lot of continuity between them. Because we're giant Al fans.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Who isn't?
I mean, genuinely, I think he's my favorite working comics writer. I'm just
awesome.
And he's been super gracious about this run too. We got to meet at the Marvel Summit. And we got to talk about this, and it was really awesome because he was I can help set you up in Red. Here's the ways that we can.
Cool.
And it was lovely.
Perfect. That's amazing. I mean, we've taken a lot of your time today, but we got a couple more things to touch on, I think.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's call it 10, and then I'm gonna have to go. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to speed run it really quick.
Appreciate
Star Trek. Star Trek, this is coming out soon, and just talk about where it's going really quick.
Of course. Star Trek is happening boom, straight up today. So the day that this episode comes out, if you are reading our Star Trek books or if you are interested in getting into it, this is a really good day to do it, because today 2 books come out at the same time as Star Trek. So Star Trek number 5 comes out. That's the 5th issue of our new ongoing Star Trek run. That is a flagship title, right? That is just going. There is no endpoint. I've started saying sort of publicly, we have about a 3.5-year plan. We're doing a thing, and Star Trek fans are showing up, and IDW is happy with the book. So I think we're going to get to do it. So all right, let's really try to tell a big, ongoing, awesome narrative in Star Trek with great artists and in connectivity to the canon. Okay. That's what we're doing. And starting with episode 5, or issue 5, really, we take that to the next level, and something that we had pitched from the very, very beginning, which is this isn't a single issue, it's a line. So, a single book, it's a line. So, like the Star Wars line, you have Star Wars, and then you have Darth Vader. in Star Trek, you have Star Trek and you have Star Trek Defiant. Star Trek Defiant is our sort of like dark, weirder, more dangerous, kind of funnier book. That's coming from Chris Cantwell, one of my very favorite writers, Halt and Catch Fire, Iron Man, Briar. He's coming in to with Anel Unzueta, who did Darth Vader, to come in and just absolutely, and obviously Iron Man, to come in and just absolutely murder this book. It's going to follow Captain Worf and a bunch of the renegade characters from the Star Trek universe who are going to be breaking away from the main title as a result of issue 5. So you'll literally be able to read issue 5, and an event happens in issue 5 that drives a giant wedge between Sisko and Worf. Worf is going to leave the ship and immediately enter his new book. So you'll be able to pick them up, read Star Trek 5, read Defiant #1, and start to see the shape of the canon that we're all doing. And all of this is building to an event similar to Cold War, like a big overline event called Day of Blood that's going to be coming in, I believe, July. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a really incredible time. It's a very exciting time for Star Trek books. We've got a lot of fun, other people coming into play. I know a lot of secret plans. So if you're loving what we're doing over at Marvel or DC and you've ever been interested in getting into Trek, now's the time. This is a great time.
Yeah, go check it out.
Since Worf has his own ship now, is Steele going to come over and be one of his commanding officers?
Maybe. Now apparently Michael Dorn is writing at DC, which I
talked about that.
I cannot wait. I want to meet him so bad. I hope we get to sign together. I'm gonna put Steelworks in.
Yeah.
We have a DC book that hasn't been announced yet. And I'm like, I want to put Steelworks in that book just so we can hang out with Michael Dorn. I love it.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That's dope.
And I think the last thing we need to talk about today is Thor Quest, Hammer of the Gods, right?
Yeah, Thor Quest, Hammer of the Gods. So
Thor Quest.
Thor Quest was our is a totally new thing. So I was talking about how we like to come in and build avenues for different people to come in on comics. Thor Quest is the first avenue we've had in a really long time. Certainly the first one the Hive Mind's done for young readers. Thor Quest is for basically middle grade. So anybody who's like a young kid can get into it. There's nothing inappropriate for young kids. There's nothing that's gonna, I think, throw adults. It's very funny and it's full of like cool Marvel references and humor and all that stuff. So like as an adult, you can probably read this book in a day. Like it's a pretty quick read, but it's a full prose novel with inset pictures and comics and puzzles and like games, all kinds of stuff. Like this, it's sort of an experiment in doing a middle grade book that embraces the whole Marvel Thor canon and tells you the stories of these kids as kids. So what is that first adventure with Sif and Thor and Loki and Fandral? It's like pre-Warriors 3. Fandral and Thor are best friends. Fandral is kind of Thor's like hype man, and Thor's kind of like the star kid around Asgard. And the story follows the two of them through Fandral's perspective. Fandral's kind of our narrator, not Thor. As they set off on a quest to go retrieve a mysterious hammer from Nidavellir that has been waylaid by a dwarven warlord. So there's a certain sort of secret origin to this story that you're going to be getting about Thor and his relationship with Mjolnir. At the same time, they're joined by the kid who's basically been made responsible for Thor's well-being over the summer, his quote-unquote babysitter, who is this young girl named Sif, who's just shown up in Asgard from Vanaheim. She's brand new here. She's a like A+ student. She's the baddest ass little girl you've like ever met. She's a total expert with a sword. She's really, awesome. Really serious. And she's our other perspective character as she comes to Asgard thinking that it's going to be her chance to earn glory. And instead she gets stuck babysitting Thor on this quest. And so she ends up making really good friends with Loki, who comes along to sort of help make sure that everybody makes it out alive and that they can make some mischief along the way. And so it's that four, right? Fandral, Sif, Thor, and Loki, from Sif's perspective and Fandral's perspective, going off into this big multi-world adventure. It's the first part of a larger franchise. So it'll be, you'll get to the end of the first book and you'll really see the second book coming. We're in the middle of the second book right now. And it's just really, we're so excited for people to see it. It's the first time we've ever written prose. It was a beautiful thing that was put together by a Disney editor named Megan Logan, who was a big fan of our book Joyride, and just gave us a shot at this really before we were writing Kang. Like, this was our first Marvel thing. We were writing this years ago.
Oh, wow.
And we're finally getting into people's hands. Art by Billy Young, who is just wonderful, beautiful, killer art, super charming. So for the kid in your life, or if you want to just feel like a kid for a day, Thor Quest is going to be it. It's coming out in July. We'll actually have it at San Diego Comic-Con. So if you're coming to San Diego Comic-Con, we'll be releasing it a week early there. You'll be able to get it from us there, and we can sign it and do the whole thing. And otherwise, it'll be out the week after Comic-Con.
So I know we got to wrap this up, but I just want to say I love that more than anything we talked about. I love that because I get all the time friends of mine with kids who are like the kids showing interest in comics. Well, they come to me because I'm the comic guy in town. What do I get them? And it's really hard. It really is hard.
Yeah.
I love when I get announcements like these. I bought all these kids flashbacks a little while back, which the actress who played Amy Farrah Fowler wrote, and like stuff like that, but we don't see it enough. So I love that you're doing that.
I think DC has a really great run on some YA and middle grade books, and there's some really good ones along the line there. And we've been really eager to do one ourselves. So this was a really exciting opportunity to flex that, because I get the same thing. People come to me and they're like, "What should I get my kids?" Like the other day, I went to my bud's house and his I think she's like 9-year-old daughter had read Kang the Conqueror, and I was like, "That's not appropriate." Like, I love that. I'm really glad you read Only Myself, and she loved it.
Yeah,
so I was like, "That's awesome."
Yeah.
But on the flip, I was reading books of magic when I was 9, so I get it. But at the same time, I would really love for there to be a book that is like right in the wheelhouse of a kid her age, and that's what Thor Quest is. Thor Quest is for girls who feel like they really want to just kick the butt of every boy they meet, and it's for boys who feel like they want to tell stories for the rest of their lives, and it's for everybody in between. Like, it's a really inviting sort of space for new comics fans to learn about the Thor mythos. So I hope it gives you something to recommend.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
It's gonna be a blast.
All right, we've used up enough of your time.
Thank you, guys.
Jackson. You're going to come back to make up for it because we got more stuff to talk about.
We'll get Colin back in 6 months. We'll make
get Colin back in 6 months. You'll see you in 6 months.
It's like a dental check-in every 6 months.
We'll schedule. We'll send you your appointment by mail.
Love it.
Before you take off, though, do you want to pimp out any social media websites or anything you have?
Of course. If you want to follow me, I'm at Jackson Lanzing on Twitter. You can follow Colin at CP Kelly on Twitter. I believe on Instagram he's the Colin Kelly, and on Instagram I'm found in the wild. I'm trying to get better at that platform because Twitter is a giant garbage fire. But that's where we live. No websites, no Substack, no nothing. If you want to know more about us, buy our comics. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and to all the listeners out there, not only check out those, but I'll also put in the show notes down below links to the previews catalog where you can order Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor and all of the stuff that they're doing. So you can just click on those and order them straight to your local comic shop.
Thank you,
Jackson. Thanks so much. It's been a blast talking to you for over an hour, and I'm sure we could go another 2 or 3, but I think you have things to do, so we won't take up any more time.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. This was a blast.
Thanks.